good vibrations.
And the phrase, if it ain't one thing, it's another, is one that really springs to mind here, as we've just done a show with Ian Crane talking about the clear and present danger of fracking. And here we are with the follow-up show addressing another clear and present danger to the health and well-being of people in the UK and several other parts of the world as well, in the form of the imminent rollout of 5G, fifth generation communications technology, aka radiation, coming to a town or city near you soon if it's not stopped in its tracks. So my guest today is someone who probably never imagined he'd have to be doing what he currently is with his time, and will probably rather be doing other things, but he's felt compelled to step up to the mark and do his thing on the grounds that it just needs to be done. So welcome to businessman turned activist and campaigner, Mark Steele. Welcome along, mate.
Good afternoon to everybody who's listening in, Mark. I'll just give people a little bit of a background of me in the first instance. I'm an inventor. I invent head-up display systems, whether they be, waveguides in particular. And the reason I know that optical radiation is a known hazard. Now, obviously, microwave radiation, the things that are emitted from these 5G transmitters, they're a little bit further down the electromagnetic radiation spectrum. So consequently, in my view, not as concerning as some of the light frequencies that I operate at, and some of the things I know quite a lot about. I got involved with the whole microwave radiation issue due to some products that were coming into the country that basically weren't what you would say are safe. Basically, I call them killer tech. Exactly what they are. Head-up display systems, some of these gaming headset systems, etc., where they have antenna at close proximity to people's heads. And we all know that, if you look at any of the regulatory standards, or you look at your mobile phone, you should not keep a mobile phone next to your body. If you do, it will most certainly fail the international regulatory guidelines. I shouldn't have said standards before, because there's no such thing as standards, only guidelines. The reason why they're guidelines, it's like the Pirates Code. The reason why they are guidelines is because we know that those guidelines are not safe. The evidence, the science says they're not safe. All of the non-thermal the guidelines only refer to the thermal impact. So basically, it's what I call a cooking value. So what the regulator says, as long as the device is only cooking you a little bit, then you're safe.
Yeah, so fellas, think twice about keeping your mobile phone in your front trouser pocket next to your vital organs, right?
Well, the real concern about that, it can damage the DNA. So there's a risk that your children could be born deformed, and maybe they might not be born deformed, but their children may be born deformed, because this radiation can damage the functioning of the DNA. And obviously, we see from the epidemiological studies massive increases in self-harm. I mean, when I went to school, I'm probably a little bit older than most of your listeners, but when I went to school, none of the children that I was at school had self-harmed. There's 70,000 children in schools self-harmed last year, and we know what the cause is. No ifs, no buts. Microwave radiation causes neurological disorders at non-thermal levels. So the levels that you'll see in classrooms, damaging kids, damaging their minds, damaging the way that they think. The rollout of 5G in Bristol, the experimental rollout of 5G in Bristol, which I kind of get my head around yet, by the way, because they're not experimenting with it on the battlefield. They've been using it for quite a number of years. So why anybody want to experiment with it in a university is totally beyond my comprehension. They just don't know that what the weapons systems experts know. Now, obviously, they haven't been given that information yet. That's what 5G most certainly is. It's battlefield interrogation equipment.
I do want to get into Bristol University and some of these other areas where they're rolling out some of these test exercises. But you've hit the alternative news headlines recently, and a couple of mainstream ones, through your interaction with Gateshead Council, your local neighbourhood over that town being used as a testbed for 5G transmissions, with fairly disastrous results, it would seem. I know you're gagged in certain things and you're not able to go into all the detail, but if you can stand to run through the story just one more time, could you bring listeners up to speed on the background behind this and where things are with it all currently?
Well, I'm up in court. I've got a court date on the 11th. It's an injunction. I've got an interim injunction against me. I'm up in court on the 11th of October at Newcastle Quayside Courts. So if anybody wants to pop along and see the law in action there in relation to what I know to be a significant problematic issue as far as health concerned, human health is concerned, pop along, get your eyes opened up, and people need to really wake up. I cannot really talk a great deal about it, Mark, for obvious reasons. I've got this, it's quite an encompassing gagging order, and what I can't do is embarrass anybody at the council. So, unfortunately, anything I say on the subject, they get embarrassed pretty quickly. You can imagine if I was to tell people some of the things that's going on in Gateshead, those councillors could very easily, and the people in there could very easily get embarrassed. So I can't really talk in regard to that. I've also got a criminal case, which I'm not gagged, I don't believe, on that particular case. And that is, I'm currently having a talk with the district judge in relation to that. But one of the interesting things that all your readers may want to, or your followers may want to have a look at, the CPS are going to use a case. It was Ailid v DPP. These were three guys that were arrested for aggravated trespass onto a military base in the UK during the Iraq War. Their defence, as my defence is, Section 3 of the criminal justice system, that, to stop a far more evil crime, a bit like self-defence, people have the legal duty, to act in law. Right? So these guys, they trespassed onto a military site and they were found guilty. And it eventually went to the House of Lords, and they were found guilty because really they were just assuming that because we were at war with Iraq, then genocide would be happening, right? So they didn't have any proof of the genocide, and they actually lost in their case. Now you've got to remember the CPS haven't reviewed all of my evidence. In fact, we've seen very little of it. We are in the process of exchanging the evidence, and we'll be talking about that on the 9th of October at a magistrate's court at South Shields. And that's going to be quite an interesting conversation. Obviously, I've got quite a lot of evidence, right, to substantiate my defence, which is Section 3 in the criminal justice system, where I'm availing myself in my legal duty to stop a far more serious set of crimes, not one crime, a number of crimes that have been perpetrated in my near locality. So I think that's about as much as I can talk about in that regard, Mark. I've got to be, like I said, I've got to be really careful because the injunction, believe it or not, is a problem in relation to the criminal case. It's basically stopped me from investigating some criminal activity. It basically stopped me from, sort of investigating, and that's what I have been doing. I've been investigating this since 2017, and believe us, I've been absolutely appalled at what I've come across. Yeah. Absolutely appalled. And it's basically just about getting that into the court system so that a judge can actually evaluate the evidence that he's going to have put in front of him. The issue that he's going to have, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, get it on the public record.
It's on the public record, and it is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I've done a number of talks around the country on this 5G, and I always say to people before I start to paint a picture for people, and that's all I do. I expect everybody to do their own research, and anybody listening to this, check Professor Martin L. Powell. Emeritus professors are always the best people to look for evidence, to look for science. The reason why they haven't got somebody's, let's say, fist up their backside, they're not puppets, because they don't have to adhere to rules and regulations. They can just basically cover off the real science, and that's why Martin L. Powell, highly cited work, not the only one, Ollie Johansson, Professor Deborah Davis, Environmental Health Trust, numerous professors around the world who all believe, what I believe, that this technology is not safe. And not only is it not safe, it's unregulated, it's untested, it is experimental. It's in breach of the Nuremberg Code.
Right.
Nuremberg Code prohibits anyone from experimenting on humans, and in particular prohibits the experimentation of any technology that has been shown to cause significant harm in animal studies. Now, we know that this microwave radiation emissions have been shown to cause, in thousands of published peer-reviewed papers, to cause harm to animals.
So there was a Daily Mail article earlier in the year on you versus the council, and the article mentioned that there were 3 women, I believe, in the Gateshead area that gave birth to stillborn babies. It was mentioning people coming down with nosebleeds, with sleeping disorders, with all kinds of other physical ailments, and the suggestion is that the 5G test rollouts were responsible for this. Are you able to comment on any of the things that were in that article? Also in it, I should add, was Gateshead Council issuing an official statement saying there's nothing to worry about, there's absolutely no scientific evidence to suggest that any of this is going on, and it's certainly not down to us doing any test transmissions from the antennas in the area. So they're flat out denying that there's any responsibility on their part. Are you able to comment on any of those things?
I've got to be really careful, Mark, but what I'll suggest to anybody who's listening to this is do your own research. You go and have a look and see how much scientific evidence and how many of the world's leading scientists agree with me. Because, that press release, that international press release that was taken out, and we now know who the architect of that press release is. We didn't. It was an anonymous press release that was run by the BBC in breach of their regulatory codes. It was in breach of if I send you an anonymous press release, any journalist will tell you, you have to be able to understand, you have to be able to verify the veracity of the statement. You can't just put press releases out that are contrary to what we all understand to be true.
Right.
God help us, No wonder Jimmy Savile got away with the abuse that he did for the many years as he did, due to the inadequacies of the established systems that should have brought him to book. And obviously in this instance, you have a press release here that, from my perspective, doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. Lovely country we live in, isn't it? And, the incredible thing to me is you've got all these councillors in Gateshead and all these officials from the judiciary and stuff, and they're just trying to shut you down and shut down any kind of discussion on these subjects. And yet the threats that are facing the people of this land as this technology gets rolled out are actually going to affect them and their families and their children as well. And yet so many people seem willing to put a paycheck and a career path above their own personal health, which always astounds me. So you mentioned a while back Bristol University. We touched on that. I believe a bunch of students are said to have committed suicide there just recently. I also believe that there are 5G test transmissions that have been rolled out all over the West Midlands, that whole region. And I was there actually at the weekend chatting to some people in the West Midlands, and they're not particularly chuffed about the fact that their area has been chosen. But somebody also mentioned the Orkney Islands in Scotland and said that, yeah, there's going to be some tests rolled out there as well. So that's nice and remote and out of the way, where any problems that do occur can be kept away from any kind of mainstream scrutiny. So that seems to be a pretty unusual choice of region. Have you heard about that one?
Well, I've heard about it, and I don't believe the mainstream media narrative. 5G's everywhere. Don't let them try and kid you. It's masquerading as a control management system. Anybody who has new LED street lighting, you most probably have some form of 5G.
So it's already everywhere, you're saying?
Already everywhere. Already everywhere. That's the mainstream narrative. It's not fully operational yet. I believe that will come in 2021. Because obviously the people that are the architects of this, they like numbers. They think about numbers. So 2021 is the let's say its initiation date. We do have a few, yeah. I suggest everybody get up to speed. It's outside your home. It's there already. Still, it's the infrastructure still being built out. But make no mistake about it, it's actually there. 5G operates not only in a higher frequency waveforms, it operates in the sub-gigahertz part of the spectrum. So I was blindsided by it when I first started investigating what it was. Because obviously my impression is the mainstream media suggests it's higher frequency waveform. It is. It's not all of that. But the main push is the sub-gigahertz part of the spectrum. It's on top of street lighting. Anybody with new LED street lighting, believers, and anybody suffering any sleepless nights, nosebleeds, etc., neurological disorders, etc., it's there.
And what about non-urban areas? So if you decide to go and live out on the moors somewhere in some remote location, is it likely to eventually catch you up there as well, or is it just being restricted to towns and cities mainly?
Well, the Smart City Agenda, secret militarised armaments and residential technology, I coined that phrase because that's exactly what it is, where this equipment comes from, for military developed products. The central government's plan is to roll 400,000 what's called massive in, massive out, phased array. It's radar, basically radar. What they're saying is that farmers need to have autonomous tractors. God knows why, but they need tractors that drive themselves. And, we need to get farmers off the land. I don't know what the plan there is, but the MIMO tanks is 400,000 planned for the countryside so that farmers can get broadband. I'm telling you now, 5G's got nothing to do with telecommunications. It is a phased array radar system. And what I mean by that, got small pads, small antennas, significant numbers of antennas, and you offset the signal so it actually acts as a radar system. So you actually can scan, radar the environment, 3D map it. Now you're 3D mapping it with a signal that is a class 1 cancer causing radiation emission. And at significant levels below the emission, you will kill all pollinators. So all your pollinators will die. So the 400,000 are rolling out in the countryside. There'll be no salmon fishing. There'll be nothing for the salmon to eat. They'll die. It'll kill all the pollinators, kill any of the moths. And we've already seen massive decreases. I mean, catastrophic decreases in small pollinators. We know what the cause is. The science says it's the microwave radiation transmitters, not the diesel cars, and not the nicotinides. Nicotinides are being blamed by the mainstream media. The BBC keep promoting this absolute horseshit. They keep saying that it's got something to do with these pesticides. I'm not saying that they're not, and there isn't some effect there, but I can tell you, in the 70s when they were spraying the land with DDT, killed a few farmers, by the way, very lethal, toxic chemical there, didn't kill all the pollinators. All the pollinators are dying. It's not the nicotinides. Your butterflies, your ladybirds do not live on arable land. The other ones that have died, your earwigs, your daddy longlegs. Daddy longlegs don't live on arable land. That's where the pesticides, the nicotinides, have been put down. They're coated onto seeds. They're below the ground. Anybody that believes it's nicotinides, well, anybody that believes the BBC believers, you know what I mean? Well,
yeah.
You know.
Well, I've got to say, I've seen about 2 daddy longlegs this year. And normally what happens in September is there's an absolute influx of these things. They're bloody everywhere. They get trapped in your house. You see hundreds of them. I literally have seen 2 this September. I'd be interested to hear from other people around the UK if they've had an influx of daddy longlegs, but I have noticed that there's been none of them this year. And we hear that 5G is deadly to insects, and even certain birds are likely to be killed off by all of this, right?
Well, Mark, it's generally, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G or 5G. 5G's, let me try and define 5G. 5G is densification. That means more. So more antennas, smaller areas, right? So they can basically get more energy, more microwave radiation energy into a smaller area. Well, if you're going to map, if you're going to start phased array and 3D mapping areas, you need lots of these small antenna cells, right, in a close proximity, because you don't want them too far away from you, because obviously then they've got to pull more energy from where they're emitting from, and obviously that'll kill it. You know, you get people walking around a transmitter and just popping off their socks. So they need to get them next to your home. They need them as close as possible so that they can actually 3D map your home. That's what 5G is. So, and the difference is obviously, you know, in the 80s, we started off with 1G and 2G, started seeing significant increases in people's mental health, deterioration from those times, as obviously as the increase in the microwave radiation. And obviously, people get used to the exposures. A bit like the boiling frog experiment. You just, you know, it's slowly catch a monkey. So now we're at toxicity levels that are so high, you know, seeing massive increases in child brain cancer, massive increases in suicide, massive increases in mental health, self-harm, all the things that are attributed to microwave radiation pollution. That's what it is, microwave radiation pollution. On the back of the Green Party and others, because obviously they have this green agenda, what I cannot understand is that promoting these organisations, you know, environmental organisations, most certainly being hacked, all of them. We've spoke to Greenpeace, we've spoke to, you know, Friends of the Earth, we've spoke to the Green Party, all hacked. Absolutely don't trust them. They've all been sort of compromised. None of them are talking about the microwave radiation pollution that is killing and will kill everything. The differential between this, microwave radiation is basically an energy in air. Energy in air. Charges air, creates heat in air. So obviously no wonder the temperature's going up. The more transmitters you get, that'll increase the energy and the heat in air. So no wonder we're getting global warming. We've got power stations pumping out energy through these transmitters, increasing the temperature. You know, talk about global warming. Believe it, you're getting it. It's called 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. And 5G, the main differential with 5G is the antenna design. And the reason the antenna design is different, it has a dielectric lens, a high gain, high focus antennas in most instances. It has a dielectric lens, and what that does, it allows me to shoot a signal. It allows me to target acquire. So I can target acquire a target, and I can shoot a signal at it. Now, some people might think the guys just totally went off it. They were testing it in South Korea. As part of the test, shooting wild boar in the jungle. Basically, phased array radar, checking the jungle, looking for wild boar and shooting them. Right, that was in the mainstream. Right, I'm not making this up. I know it sounds unbelievable, and is unbelievable, like I said before, through your own research.
And all this stuff is, of course, sold to us under the guise of convenience, as these things always are. what you were saying about getting broadband to farmers out in their fields. I mean, that's a real problem, isn't it? You know, farmers in between herding sheep and milking cows, they want to check their Facebook, of course, and they want to post a picture on Instagram. So it's a real problem being out in a field and not being able to do that. So thank God they're going to be able to, you know, achieve that soon. And, you know, it's a real drag having to drive a tractor as well. It's far better to have an automated one. Who wants all the faff and hassle of, you know, driving a tractor yourself? So, yeah, convenience is a great thing. I mean, who wants to wait 3 minutes to download a movie when you could have it in 30 seconds after all? So, you know...
Well, the big, you know what... Yeah, Mark, we need to get back to putting things in cables. You know, these the analog phased array antenna was called Imminent. It was used by the Germans during the Second World War. I mean, everybody's seen the Private Ryan film, The Last Mammoth. You know, the one where the guys are having a bit of a fight with the machine gun nest, and one of the number gets killed. Well, the radar behind that machine gun nest in the film Private Ryan is Mammoth. It was the first phased array antenna system, and it was extremely problematic to aircrews. Not just because it could direct enemy aircraft to them, searchlights, and weaponry. It also posed a significant risk to the pilots due to the phased array radiation emitted from them. Because in phased array, you can actually punch out the signal, you can focus the signal. Nowhere near as sophisticated as what it is today, by the way. We're going back into many, many years ago. Now, after the war, the GPO came at great expense and put a lot of wood poles up around the country. They did that for a reason, because those telephone signals, we had transmitters then, we had systems where you could transmit signals. They knew they were dangerous. And then as we come into the 80s, we start to see telecoms companies, media companies who want to stick a mast up at the end of the street and blow a load of radiation into your home so you can pick up a signal on a satellite. As the signals became less analog and more digitized, the more digitization, the more complex the signal, the more damaging it is to a human. Because obviously you start to get into these, these pulse-modulated signals. Your body's not used to it. You're used to natural radiation, which is immersive, not pulse-modulated at you. So the more complicated pulse modulation, the more problematic that signal becomes to you. And obviously that's where we are today. So we've got massive increases in cancer. Mortality rates are starting to go through the roof. In certain areas around the country which have already had 5G installed covertly and in secret, you'll start to see significant increases in the death of populations in those areas. Already seen that. Mainstream media have covered it. But what they're not telling you, because they don't know what the cause is, well, unfortunately, I do. I'm telling people. So we know what the cause is. It's a bit of an issue. And, it's incumbent on all of us from a humanitarian legal perspective. I'm obliged in law to act. Inaction is a crime. And can be seen to be a crime. So those that know about this, who aren't acting, who aren't doing anything about it, basically are putting their liberty at risk. Because when this story comes out, and make no mistake about it, we are here to win this. Losing's not an option, and we will win it. I had a chat with a guy in the USA this morning who are getting themselves organised to win this. And believe us, they've got some significant support behind them, right? They're going to win this. Yep. And those that sit on their hands currently, who are sitting on their hands and pretend it's not happening, the people you spoke to before were only interested in picking up their wages. That would be the least of their worries by the time this all gets out.
Well, I'm with you on that. Totally agree. We'll get on to some solutions and some ways that people can get galvanised themselves shortly. Another thing, though, is the huge number of trees that are having to be cut down to make way for these antennas. And, the antennas themselves are going to be ugly and, they're just going to blight the landscape. We've already got bloody mobile phone antennas and pylons and fracking towers and stuff, but trees are going to have to be cut down in huge numbers as their water-based organic material has been found to absorb the signal. And you're going to need these antennas everywhere to keep amplifying the signal because they're such short wave. So the trees are a real problem because they're absorbing the signal. What else is water-based organic life? That would be us. So, it's being admitted that the trees are a real problem to these signals being carried forward, and yet the same thing would seem to apply to humans, which seems to be getting missed in all of this.
Well, it damages the trees as well, Mark. So you start to see the foliage drop off. You'll start to see anomalies in bark. You'll see bark breaking off trees. Because obviously these signals are damaging to all biological structures. Smaller structures, it's more deleterious. In fact, Protection Health England, so I've been told someone at Protection Health England says that my assumption that microwave radiation has a more deleterious effect on, I've got this in writing by the way, has a more deleterious effect on small-bodied insects, small animals, is not based in science. Quite interesting, because a basic physical law, the more energy you pour into a smaller bodied biological structure, the more damage it causes. And that's why all of the leading scientific papers show that children, the unborn, small flying insects are more impacted by this type of radiation. In fact, this scientific paper we just picked up about bees, if I was to fire a 30 millivolt signal at you, it wouldn't make any difference at all. In fact, even the Bioinitiative report has stated that at 30 millivolts, you're safe. The bees not. Bees not. We can show that bees are stressed at 30 millivolts. We'll leave a hive at 30 millivolts. It'll kill them at 30 millivolts. So that's the reason why I'm not seeing many insects flying about. And if all those pollinators die, you know what happens next? So we basically have an existential threat. The trees, as you said, play a significant role in the environment, how they produce oxygen, how they filter out carbon dioxide. I thought this whole green agenda was to get rid of carbon dioxide and make the environment cleaner. Well, obviously not, because obviously the plan is to chop down all the trees.
Right.
Chop down all the trees, so there's no, and you've got organisations like the Green Party, absolutely unbelievable, who are behind these smart meter energy companies who require 5G to talk to their smart meter, putting people on the dole, increasing fire risk in people's homes, damaging people's health. This is just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Just wanted to make the observation that what you were saying about all these supposedly green activist parties and charities and all these organisations just turning a blind eye to this and not addressing it at all speaks volumes. There's either large numbers of payments going on under the table behind people's backs, or it speaks to the true nature of these organisations all along and what they were really set up to do, which is rather different to what the public is trained to believe about them, because none of them seem to be taking action in all this, and this is exactly the type of event where you'd expect them to step up and make their presence felt.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm absolutely astounded. I mean, I took this to Natural England, and the guys at Natural England went, thinking out this interesting. There's obviously these small transmitters where the fitment within the near field, the radiation in the near field from these transmitters is lethal. Lethal to a human, never mind a small flying pollinator. And I took this information to Natural England and said, look, this 5G rollout, it's an annihilation event for, small pollinators. That then will kill off the bats. The bats are internationally protected because obviously they're not going to get anything to eat. We know that the LED streetlights kill flying pollinators anyway. The 450, 460 nanometers frequency pulse modulated at them kills them. So they're basically just an annihilation event for small pollinators. And that then knocks on, you've got a massive knock-on problem with, your bats, your birds, everything's going to be affected by this. And took it to Natural England. Guys say, well, this is amazing. We'll get back. I mean, they really got that, got that tail up. Next minute, we've been frustrated, can't talk to you anymore. That's it. The B group, so the government's B group, these are the people who are supposed to be protecting our bee stock. Contacted them. They said microwave radiation. They had research to show that the microwave radiation has no effect on bees. In fact, they've done research themselves. So ask for that research, because the research we have shows the exact opposite. And we're quite interested to have a look at it to see how they'd manipulated it to try and get that result. Lo and behold, they wouldn't respond. We then had to send a free information to them, and now they have told us that they don't have any. Why these organisations that we pay their salaries misinforming the general public? Because, normally a person would ring them up and go, listen, I'm really concerned, these towers killing all the bees. They turn around and say, no, we've done loads of research, got lots of research here, that's not the case. Most people will leave it there. But you see, I'm a little terrier. When I was at school, teachers used to lie a lot. Used to tell you things that weren't exactly the truth a lot. They used to misinform a lot. And the reason I know that is because when I was a little kid, I was a nerd. I used to sit with encyclopedias and books, and I used to read things that children of 8 and 9-year-olds wouldn't read. Consequently, when I went to school, I was a bit of a know-it-all. And then and teachers used to say things, and I used to go, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And it was bizarre. I lived in this total sort of mad world where I was completely different to everybody. In fact, I thought I was off a different planet because I was so different than my peers. But it was more the fact that I realised that the things that come out of some people's mouths, you must interrogate them and do your own research. And that's why I say to people, anyone who's listening to this, do your own research. Do not take any notice of what I've said. All I'm doing is painting a picture. Go and do your research. It's far more powerful. You'll find it's far more shocking than what I'm actually telling you today. I'll point in the right direction. Like I said, Professor Martin L. Pal, very interesting chap with some fantastic lectures on YouTube. Have a look at the Save Us Now website. Have a look at the Save Us Now YouTube videos of the collapse and the pollinators and the collapse of the small flying bird population. Just, have a look around. Have a look around. There's enough of it out there. In fact, I think you only have to type in Google even 5G dangers, and I don't. There's such a growing number of bits of documentary evidence. In fact, there's a really interesting appeal that just went out. It's the 5G space appeal, and it's 5G space appeal, all one word, .org hyphen the appeal. Go and have a look for it, and pass it to your friends and family. It's been set up by some very interesting characters. I had a bit of a hand in it. Obviously, the stuff that I talk about, the weapon systems, it's not really for mainstream consumption, because talking about 5G is unbelievable. Talking about the things that I really do know about is even more unbelievable. So I'll try and keep it simple and stick to the simple things like the LED street lighting. The LED street lighting that we all hate. The street lights that put outside your home, they've only been in Barcelona for 2 or 3 years now, and they've doubled the breast and the prostate cancer. Exeter University published a paper that fits with the weapon systems expertise that I have and the research that I have on this particular subject that shows that these blue LED, the 460, round about the 460 nanometers emitters are extremely hazardous. And how they look white to you, they have a phosphor coating. So anything that looks got a bit of a bluey tinge, it's the blue LED, not safe. All right, get it in your eye. Wear protective eyewear. I do all the time. People ask, I go to do talks, etc., on this 5G subject, and people ask me why I wear protective. Well, they think I wear dark glasses so you can't see my eyes. I don't know what they're looking for. There's nothing in there, but I wear protective eyewear all the time. My eyes are sensitive to this type of radiation, but what I'm trying to do is not get central nervous system cancer, because that's what you'll develop from being exposed to pulse-modulated blue LEDs.
What is the situation with other nations then? Is this technology being rolled out all around the world at the same time?
Well, not in Russia, not in Eastern Bloc countries, not in Iran, not in. It looks like it's the G7. We're under attack from this experiment. That's what it looks like to me. Whether it's I don't know what it really is. Mainly stupidity. I mean, I hear all the conspiracy stories. I've heard them all before. I totally discount them all. I just think it's absolute stupidity. What's actually happened? We've ended up with a load of ignorant, stupid people in charge. And unfortunately, like as you said before, this will kill their children, not just ours. This will cause DNA damage to their children. So when their children are at school trying to commit suicide, throwing themselves off bridges, self-harming, and they've got them in the Priory, and I don't know what the cost in the Priory is. It'll be a few £1,000 a day, I would think, off the top of my head. When they're paying for from their daughter suffering from anorexia and all other mental health issues that this microwave radiation can cause, it's affecting them.
So you don't accept that there's an elite ruling class that are psychopathic and want to kill us all? You think it's down to greed and corruption and stupidity?
Yeah, I'd like to think that. So I just think the science, Mark, the science is terrifying enough without going into the conspiracy theory thing. And I've got no doubt that, and I would never discount anybody's opinion on that. But what I'll say is I'll just stick to the science. Okay,
well, we can have another discussion another day about psychopathic elites once we've removed this threat to human health, maybe.
Well, that's all. Yeah, well, that's what we've really got to focus on. We've got to get 5G stopped, and everybody that listens to this, they have to take note. Like, it's time to act. Sitting on the fence, keyboard warriors, believers, it's time to get active. It's time to do the things that I have been accused of doing. Right? It's time for people to get off the fence. Get off the fence and make things happen. Talk to people. Talk, tell, text. We're starting to see a significant increase of people starting to work out that there's something very untoward going on. The collapse in the ladybird population, the butterfly population, etc., starting to focus people's attention. If I was a high court judge, or on the bench, and I like to go, up the Tweed and do a bit of salmon fishing or shooting a bit of grouse, which I know quite a number do. There's no grouse, there's no insects for them to eat, and there's no salmon. There's a salmon need to eat insects as well. And believe you me, we can point the finger directly and squarely at the transmitters and the increase in transmitters that have been shown to kill these type of pollinators and wildlife. And the LED streetlights are no different. They are an existential threat. AMA, the Medical Association, did a paper in relation to how the LEDs are significantly deleterious, and especially the small pollinators, which has a massive knock-on effect across the whole estate.
I just wonder where the courage and the conscience and the right action is with these people that are working for the energy companies that are putting this stuff out, the infrastructure for actually putting up the antennas and getting all this, the networks into place. There's a lot of people involved in doing that. There's people employed by the councils that are covering all this up, people employed by the mainstream media and all these supposed charity and activist organisations that are covering it all up. Where is the right action with these people? Is it going to have to come to members of their own family starting to get sick before they realise what it is they're a part of and what they're helping to enable. It seems it is going to have to come to that because nothing else is working.
It's just sheer ignorance, Mark. I don't, these people, I spoke to a scientist of protection. I was thinking, I'll not name him. And what he said to me, well, Mark, he said, people should have blackout blinds. I said, hang on a minute. I said, you're an expert in LED street lighting. One of the, a so-called expert, let's say. I said, and you know, as I know, that pulse modulated light is dangerous. And I said, but how would how would the guy in the street know to have blackout blinds in his home? How would he know to wear protective eyewear when he goes about his business at night, on the dark nights? How would he know to bring his children in when those lights switch on because they'll increase their cancer risk? How would he know? It's protection, public health, England haven't told him. This guy was out of public health, England. I haven't told, the government haven't told you. You don't know about it. I do. I'm an expert. That's why I wear protective eyewear. And everybody thinks that's because they don't want to see my eyes. I know how dangerous
you want to look like Bono.
Exactly. Well, why does Bono wear protective eyewear all the time?
Well, that's a good question.
Exactly.
I always thought because his eyes are so demonic, he wants to cover them up. Maybe he knows something we don't know.
Maybe know something that some of us do know, and how dangerous these systems actually can be. So, experimental technologies or experiment on human beings is illegal. So we've got some unlawful and illegal activities going on. And the fix to this, I know you want to talk about that, Save Us Now party. Leave us. Get involved. Talk your number in your near locality. Save Us Now through the ballot box. Very powerful. It's a very powerful tool. It's taking the fight into the elite's backyard. They can't stop it. They won't like it. So believers will try everything in their power to limit its ability to get out there. So we have to have a groundswell, get enough people involved, get enough people active in their own communities. We are going to smash this. We're not doing it. I'm not here because I'm not going to win it. We are in this to win it. We can't lose. All we have to do is garner enough support. And we don't need massive numbers of people. We need 5% of the population to wake up. The rest will follow. It's not complicated. Look at your history. Look at the small numbers of people that made things happen around the world. Do not believe the mainstream narrative and the one that the teachers told you at school, because they lied to you when they said, well, there's nothing you can do about it. That was part of their narrative to brainwash people to think that you are impotent, to try and pretend that you cannot make a difference. It's a scam. And also be mindful of social media. Social media is set up specifically to pretend to give you a voice, but to make sure that you believe you're on your own, to make sure that you believe that your endeavors are not making any difference. It's specifically set up like that because that is your adversary's battle space. Use it in a very, very small way. The thing with this is get the word out, spread the number, talk, tell, text, tell family members, start research, start looking into things, and we'll get this whole thing stopped.
Well, I think that's a pretty good note on which to leave things. Inspiring words. Your next court date is the 11th of October, I think you said, and people can support you in that if they want to.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, 11th of October, Newcastle Quayside Courts, the main Crown Court. We'll be in there. There's quite a few people going to be there, but people have to be mindful. The more people that are there, the criminal justice system and the court system, the legal system in this country, the law has to be seen to be done. We have the law on our side. We have the judiciary on our side. Right? The judiciary have to remain impartial. They have to assess the evidence. We have the evidence. to show what this is, or what we need is. We need people to be a party to this so that they can make sure that the law, as laid down, prescribed over hundreds of years, is carried out in a correct manner.
This is just a wrap.
I'm picking up good vibrations. I'm picking up good vibrations. I'm picking up